I think if you ask the question how real or how fake the persona is, I'd say it's 100% fake. I think the things that he says don't really reflect his views at all. And there's even views and videos and footage of him interacting with fans and being super nice and super cordial. I think anybody that walks away from meeting Colby Covington will probably come away thinking, dude, he was a really, really nice guy. And a fan even asked him like, hey man, why aren't you like this in real life? Because this is what people kind of not necessarily want to see, but people will like you more. And he even said to the fan, he's like, that's just not what sells.
The winner by unanimous decision, Colby Covington.
Brazil, you're a dog. All you filthy animals suck.
Let me ask you people a question. Does anyone here really like Colby?
I'm gonna do what a real American should do. I'm bringing this belt to the White House.
This guy used to sleep in my couch, used to eat off me.
We're gonna confront Dana, and we're gonna ask him why we're not fighting this weekend.
I'm in front of you. Talk that shit you want to talk on Twitter.
Stay tuned, everybody. You guys are gonna enjoy the show.
So he was a guy who was like really dominant, rattled off some really good wins, actually fought, it was either UFC 200 or UFC 202. We were speaking to Mike Brown actually afterwards, his coach, and all of ATT, American Top Team, was super high on this guy. The problem is, as far as like post-fight promos and the entertainment aspect, the UFC didn't really see it there, and so they actually didn't want him around, even though he was on a good streak. And it wasn't until around about the RDA fight, Rafael dos Anjos, I think we started seeing that turn actually even around the Dong Hyun Kim fight, but they weren't going to re-sign him, or so he claims. He had a real tough time. He was on the sidelines for a long time. He had a tough time getting a fight in the UFC, and he thought that this is going to be basically the end of his UFC career. So what we see now is a man who kind of almost out of desperation just thought, look, I have nothing to lose. This is the way the sport is trending. He saw guys like Conor McGregor, guys like Chael Sonnen, and all the big talkers in the sport getting so far through trash talk, through getting under their opponent's skin. And if you get two guys talking to each other, it's great. And that's exactly what he tried to do.
Yeah. Hey, you're supposed to put the opponents to sleep, not the fans to sleep. My bitch, enjoy getting knocked out this week. Hey, you can still sub me in. You want to sub me in? Hey, fly back to Boca, sub me in. The real champ's here. The real champ.
There's a legit writer who works for American Top Team, according to JQN, writes promos for the guys, writes promos for Colby Covington, which is why when you hear the guy talk, you'll notice he repeats a lot of this, tries to repeat a lot of the same stuff.
The real champ. Colby. Real champ. All right, real quick. The real champ. The real champ.
Hey, yellow, Planet 13. Planet 13.
Planet 13. See you on Planet 13.
It got him on people's radar. It got people talking about him. Really polarizing guy. A lot of people not a fan of the gimmick at all. Kind of hate it. But in this pro wrestling mentality, that's really the whole point. He doesn't care whether you like him, whether you hate him. He just wants a reaction.
I got porn star cardio. Nobody can stop my cardio. I do so many rounds in the bedroom with all my different ladies that no one can keep up with that pace, man.
I think a lot of people forget just how dominant and how good he is. And he's been winning for a while now. And I think this Robbie Lawler fight most recently really opened a lot of eyes. The cardio, the technique, just the dominance that he displays in the cage.
And by the way, this is a guy that even once he became interesting, the UFC wasn't that happy about. I mean, you look at the fact that even when people were getting a rise from him, the UFC weren't really pushing this guy too much. This is still a guy that was trying to create his own fights, a guy that was trying to build a feud with Tyron Woodley.
And this is my belt. I'm the undisputed champ. Tyron Woodley, he's been hiding, man. We were supposed to fight, Bisping. Whether you want to say it, look at the facts. UFC offered him the fight last December. He's hiding. He's been ducking everybody in the division. He doesn't want to fight.
Even when people were writing headlines about him, it kind of felt like he had to create the headlines himself. And even going into UFC 245, this is still a man that's trying to promote himself more than the company's really promoting him.
Let's go see what Uncle Fester Dana White's doing. He's gambling over here at the Palms. Dana, what's up, bro? I just want an explanation why I'm not fighting for the belt this weekend.
Stop filming.
Come on, bro.
Stop filming.
I want an explanation, man.
Gambling.
When it comes to the trash talk, 99% of it's fake. The 1% that's real, for me, is his relationship with the UFC and Dana White. These are guys that have said, we don't want you. You can be the best in the world. We don't want you. You're boring. And then he switched his persona and did what they said, And they still didn't push him. And now even at this point, they're not really pushing him. So what would you do? Did they create him? This whole thing is just absolutely fascinating.
I get what he's trying to do, and I'm not mad at the kid for trying to do his thing, but you know, if you look at that video, like he rolled in and I'm so mad and all this, it was nothing like that.
Kind of looks like Dana wants things on his own terms. He doesn't want Colby Covington to dictate his promotion. And even at this stage, it doesn't look like the UFC are the biggest Colby Covington fans.
This week, Colby Covington made some headlines. He said when he beats Kamaru Usman, he says no way he's letting you wrap the belt around him. If you do, he's going to smack you in the head with it. What's your comments on that?
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. He's a big mouth fucking idiot.
And you're on that. You also look at the Conor McGregor Dolly situation in Brooklyn, New York. They rewarded him. You know, the fight wasn't cancelled. He got Khabib. In fact, other fights were cancelled, but Conor essentially got the fight that he wanted. And when Dana White said this is one of the most despicable or darkest things that we've ever had in the UFC, what did they do? The embedded, that was front and center. That was featured. That was the very thumbnail. Conor McGregor throwing the dolly. So the precedent is there that these kinds of things are rewarded. So it just goes to show that regardless of what you think about Colby Covington, the UFC has always been happy to be in bed with controversial and polarizing figures.
I've been all in my bag. You been all in my business. You be all in your feelings. I've been all in them trenches. I've been all in my bag. You be all in my business. No, they notice me flexing. Fit in all in my fitness.
He's a joke. He's a boring fighter. That's why they call him Snoozeman. Snoozeman.
Answer one question.
Man, show up. Show up. That's all I gotta say. We're gonna fight in the octagon. I ain't gonna waste my title shot fighting you in the streets. We're gonna fight in the octagon.
We live 20 miles apart. 20 miles apart. And we got mutual friends. We can meet right when we get back. It's not a problem. So don't talk big out here in front of all these people. You know you're not about that life.
The only reason he's relevant is because he attaches his name to mine. December 14th, only on pay-per-view, I'm detaching this little clown from my coattails.
And it's fascinating when you watch these guys go back and forth, because behind Usman you could see like there is a real dislike, but behind Colby Covington, you know, this is a guy that's trying to sell pay-per-views. This is not a guy that's trying to get in a fight in a buffet line with Usman. Covington's not jumping back at him. Covington's not trying to find them in the parking lot, trying to send location, trying to do all that kind of stuff. Covington just wants to build the fight. Now, I believe for Covington, Usman is just a means to an end. Whereas for Usman, you know, it looks like he doesn't really love Colby Covington and the fact that he's gotten himself to this title shot through the way that he's gone. But at the same time, when it's back and forth, you know, Usman does seem to be the guy that gets the upper hand a lot of the time.
All right, real quick. Let's make some noise on December 14th. You guys can't wait for me to murder this clown. Thank you.
Obviously, there's the history between American Top Team and the Black Zillions. Those guys are always kind of rival teams just because they're in the same area. I believe both were in Coconut Creek, Florida. I think there's a competitive rivalry, and I think because Colby has talked so much trash about Usman to get himself in the headlines, Usman hasn't taken kindly to that, because Usman hasn't really been a massive trash talker. He's sort of done, for the most part, his talking in the cage. So I think he takes exception to what Colby's doing, and I think he kind of looks at himself as a bit of an old school guy who took the traditional route, and he doesn't like what Colby's doing. And I think also when you say things about, you know, like Glenn Robinson, I don't see how Usman could, you know, not take that personally in any way.
At the end of the day, you know, if guys like Jose Aldo, guys like Demetrius Johnson, they need a great competitor to make themselves bigger. And for Usman, even though like he's annoyed by Colby Covington, having this fight in a lot of ways is great for him, because if he's able to win, it does bring a little bit of clout to him, it does bring a little bit more attention to him, it does sort of make him seem bigger. Whereas if he was fighting somebody like Tyron Woodley, for example, maybe not as many people would have cared about that fight. So it in a lot of ways for Usman, if he wins the fight, it does a lot of good.
All of this smoking can't get me a job, but that's just a risk that I gotta take. I'm a rock star, baby. Feel like I'm Chuck Berry in my Sway Sperry. I'm a pop star, baby. Feel like I'm Steve Perry hitting Holly Berries, and it's kinda scary all the power you got when you really be knowing yourself. Know that they cannot control me or hold me, cause lately I barely got hold of myself. Shit.
For me, Colby Covington is an underrated fighter. Someone that I feel like a lot of people focus on his persona, and they don't really focus on the fact that this is a guy that's constantly evolving, who comes in amazing shape, who not only is an elite wrestler, but stood with Robbie Lawler and beat him on the feet in his last fight. A guy that travels the world, fights the toughest guys, doesn't really, he fought Robbie Lawler on an ESPN card on short notice with this whole, the cut situation. So there was a lot riding on the line for him with that. I think going into this fight, I think it could be the first time that it kind of, if there is a time, it opens people's eyes to the fact that, hey, all right, maybe we start paying attention to the fact that he's actually an elite fighter. I mean, in this fight, I actually have Colby Covington winning because I think he's going to have the pace, he's going to wear Usman out, he's going to cancel the wrestling, he's going to be able to land good shots. I think Colby Covington's going to be the champion come Monday next week.
I was thinking about what it would look like when Colby Covington is champion and what kind of wrench that would throw in. Like, I'm sure Dana White's not sitting there going, I hope he's the champion given how they have clashed and butted heads. But at the same time, you look at the history and how Colby Covington always seems to be taking fights that he doesn't necessarily want to take. And I get the sense, and they've stripped him before, granted it was the interim belt, I get the sense that it's going to be kind of more of the same and he'll have to take the fights that the UFC give him, but it's going to be interesting nonetheless.
I have Colby here.
I saw you guys talking.
Here he is.
Mr. President.
This is a guy using a political platform to get fans to dislike and like. And Jeremy Botter brought this up before. This is not a guy that apparently voted for Donald Trump, but this is a guy that, and I don't know if it was him, and I don't know what his feelings are in the political scene, and I don't know if this is writers just looking at Iron Sheik and other characters in pro wrestling, but he takes that and puts that into real life, into fighting, into the UFC, and uses Donald Trump, a guy that sort of makes headlines himself, sided with that man, speaks about that man, brings, his son's book to press conferences and reads it, has dinner with him, and the first guy to go to the White House and meet the president. This is all history-breaking stuff. At the end of the day, whether Colby Covington becomes champion or not, his trash talking, even though it's played out from the pro wrestling sense of things, it's still a first in many ways in the MMA industry.
If you got something to say, come see me.